Pieszak, and for my scenario, I'm doing the World War II, and I picked four of what I thought was the most important battles of World War II, and I'm going to be showing them to you guys today. So, the Battle of Atlantic is the first one, and in the Battle of the Atlantic, pretty much it was one of the biggest battles and most important ones because it pretty much depended on whether the U.S. could supply the rest of its allies, like Soviet Union or Britain. So, the Battle of the Atlantic, the U-boats were what the Germans used. They were pretty much submarines, and the Allies just used normal ships. But the only problem was the U-boats couldn't be detected by the Allied transports until they made a Europe, not Europe, until they made a radar, and the radar could detect the submarines, and that pretty much stopped the U-boats after that point and just shut them down. And in the Battle of the Atlantic, around 30,000 sailors died, and the Allies lost 3,500 boats, which is a lot of boats. And the Germans lost about 783 U-boats. So even though we stopped them, they still did a lot of damage before we could stop them. The Battle of Britain is my next battle. It went from July 1940 to June 1941. It's the German Luftwaffe versus the Royal Air Force. Germany wanted Great Britain to surrender so they wouldn't have to invade, because Germany was just trying to attack Britain from the air and, destroy some stuff that was vital, and then they were gonna invade them once they were low on supplies. But Germany wasn't able to do that, and they were just hoping that Britain would just surrender because they didn't want anything to happen. But after they didn't surrender, they eventually just gave up. But the Germans started by bombing airfields so that they couldn't launch defense against them. After that failed, they went to destroy manufacturing buildings, and manufacturing buildings so that they couldn't produce more planes to launch at them. That didn't work, so then they went to these things called terror bombings, where they bombed the cities and civilians, which was horrible, but they had to do what they had to do, and yet that still didn't work because Royal Air Force overcame Germany's Air Force, and with superior numbers and the help of an advanced warning radar system, Germany backed off, and Battle of Britain was won. My next battle is the Battle of Stalingrad, which from August 1942 to February 1943. Germany invaded the Soviet Union and wanted access to oil wells in the Caucasus region. Stalingrad sat along the Volga River, which is the link to those oil wells that the Germans wanted. So the German Air Force reduced most of the city to rubble, ensuring close combat because they wanted close combat. And Soviets launched a counterattack, so the Germans were far from their supply lines, and winter was brutal, so they had to surrender. Hitler did not want them to surrender. They wanted them to keep fighting even through the harsh winter that they weren't used to, which made them a lot weaker. Pretty much their supply lines were far away. They didn't have any supplies, didn't have ammunition, didn't have nice clothes, didn't have food, didn't have water, and they were just absolutely destroyed, and they had to give up. And roughly 2 million casualties combined from both sides, but over 1 million of those were the Soviet troops. There's a lot of death on the Soviet side. Even though they won, it came with great sacrifice. Battle of Midway, June 4th to June 7th, 1942. Japan wanted to take control of the airstrip so they could launch attacks on the U.S. territory. Midway was an island, a little island near Hawaii, so if they got advantage of this, they would have had direct attack on Hawaii and the rest of the United States because they had an island, and this was Japan and not Germany, so Japan would have to launch a bunch of boats and carriers, and that would have been a huge process. But with this, they could just send planes over and just launch them off this runway after they got refueled, and that could be a huge threat. So this was a very important battle. The first plan that Japan had was to draw the U.S. fleet into a trap and destroy them, but the U.S. countered that because they decoded a secret message. So then they didn't fall for the trap, which led to a decisive tactical win of Midway. All four Japanese carriers that were taken into the battle were sunk, and the Hornet and the Enterprise survived unscathed, but the Yorktown was sadly lost in the battle. that is my scenario showcase for this year. I hope you guys enjoyed, and thank you.